Morning, afternoon, economics group D. Hope all is well. This is your online lesson for this afternoon. I'm doing a video because when I mentioned Zoom last Thursday, people seem to have shock horror. So I thought, all right, I'll go for a video this afternoon. But we are going to go back to Zoom, and also I'm going to put a little register up, all right, because I think some of you are not getting marked in when you should be, so I'll do that as well. Okay, anyway, I hope you're all good. Hope the weekend was good. We're going to get into it this afternoon with the characteristics of AD. All right, so this is going to be kind of my first major diagram. The diagram that I did for you with the PPF obviously relates to theme 1, so that relates to what Tim teaches. We're going into kind of the first standard macro diagram. It's not actually as bad as it might seem. So what have we done so far? Last time we met, we looked at macro objectives. Don't forget there are 6 core and 6 sub. So I'm just going to get comfortable. This chair is uncomfortable. And before that, we did 3 lessons looking at growth and welfare and all that kind of stuff. We're going to start a set of lessons now that will take about 5 lessons or so. This is the intro, and you can probably see the letters on the screen at the moment. A, D, C, I, G, X, M. We need to do a lesson each on those component parts. Then we'll go to aggregate supply, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So the characteristics of AD, what we need to know are the key components, what that CIGXM means. We need to know the relative importance of the components. So is C more impactful than I, for example? This will mean nothing to you at the moment. Do not worry. We're going to look at the AD curve. We're going to look at the idea of a movement along. I'm going to shift off the curve, and I'm going to set you a couple of worksheets, one to complete by 4:30 today, and one that is going to be for homework, and we're going to go through at the start of Thursday's lesson. So it's imperative that you listen. All right. So aggregate demand, by definition, is as follows. What is the shape of a normal demand curve? All right. Now, I know for a fact that you are working with Tim. You were doing elasticities when I came in on Thursday. So to be doing elasticities, you need to know the shape of a normal demand curve. Why is the demand curve downward sloping? Okay, well, you tell me. If you want to have a pause and think, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'll carry on. When you think about it, the law of demand, when the price is high, demand is low. When the price is low, demand is high. Hence, it's downward sloping. That's the simple law of demand. But what we're going to do is make a few little changes, all right? And it's nothing drastic. In the macro context, we need to think about the term aggregate. Aggregate means the total demand for all goods and services in an economy at any given price level over a period of time. And look at the key word there. The key word to me is total demand for all goods and services. And this is where students get things wrong. I've just spent weeks marking through mock papers from our current year 2s. And it was a half-half paper, half micro, half macro. What I noticed the confusion was students tended to draw macro diagrams for micro questions and micro diagrams for macro questions. And I get where the confusion comes from, but you know, there's a few simple changes that we're going to make. You just need to somehow get it in your head, and we're going to do that via practice at getting the right diagram for the right question. Okay? Now, what we need to recognize is that aggregate demand has got 4 main parts to it. It says there it's crucial to know and understand these in order to analyze AD more closely. We will be doing a lesson on C, I, G, X, and M. By C, I mean consumption. By I mean investment. By G, government spending. And then X, M, exports minus imports. Okay? So when you look at diagrams with Tim, still can't get comfortable. What you're seeing is, say, demand for tea in Forest Gate, like that stupid example with the Boris Johnson task. And, you know, that demand curve is purely for one commodity. Could be tea, could be oil, could be tobacco, could be nickel, copper, flights, whatever. When we're looking at AD, we're talking about the complete demand across the economy. And this curve, this downward sloping curve, is shaped by those 5 elements, CIGXM. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about those in a bit more detail. What I'm not going to do is go into too much detail, however, because there's no point me teaching you the whole of consumption, investment, government spending today, because then that means the next 5 lessons are going to be meaningless. But I'm going to set you a task where you'll need to think about these elements. Now, imagine, if you will, that AD equals 100%. Okay, so the whole AD curve is all of these things added together. What we do is that we take the C, consumption, the I, investment, the G, government spending, and then we add it to the sum of all of our exports, take away all of our imports, okay? All you need to know for today is that consumption is our spending, so when people, when citizens, when society spends money on anything, all right? And the other key point to know is that the C in this equation accounts for 67% of the complete equation, all right? So I, G, X, and M account for 33% of that formula. Consumption, C, accounts for 67%. That means that consumption is absolutely vital. Consumption dwarfs the impact on the economy of investment, government spending, etc. So what we do, what I do, what you do is absolutely key. Right. Consumers consume. I is investment. That is firms, businesses putting money into the economy. That could be to buy other companies. That could be to expand. That could be to open new outlets. Anytime a business spends their money, a firm spends their money, that is investment. And one of the key confusions that people have is consumers do invest. So, for example, I buy shares on the stock market, I'm investing my money. I put £10,000 into a trust for my child, I'm investing my money. But in this formula, because I am a human doing it, I am me doing it, buying shares and putting money into savings accounts for my son is still consumption because I'm driving that process. When you hear the term investment as part of AD, that is when firms, when businesses are doing what they do. Okay, there is the confusion ironed out. Do not get confused. Government spending, G, well, think about it. If C is consumer spending, I is firm spending, G, government spending, is the government spending their money, and that will be on benefit, that will be on infrastructure, so roads, etc., schools, hospitals, all that kind of stuff. When the government spend their money, that's going to be G. Now, we then go to XM, all right? Exports, imports. If you don't know what that means, export is when Britain sells things to a foreign country. Import is when Britain buys things from a foreign country, okay? X is key because when we export, we get money pushed into the British economy, okay? So exportation makes money for Great Britain. M, importation, loses money for the British economy. Yes, we're getting foreign products and foreign services, but that money's not going to a British company within Great Britain, okay? So if you think about this, the C, the I, the G, and the X are all kind of inflows into the economy. Consumption, us spending money. Investment, firm spending money. G, government spending money. X, foreign people spending money on our products. That's pumping money into the British economy. M, imports. That's why we're taking it away, because that is us and our companies, for whatever reason, importing goods from abroad, but obviously we're paying an American company, a French company, a Portuguese company, a Bangladeshi company, whatever, wherever. If it's not in Britain, it's not in Britain. So we have to take the value of that away. Okay, I think that is pretty much what I'm going to say for that for today. And I said we'll do a lesson on each. So let's move on. All right, now, here is the AD curve. This used to be where it would arrive line by line and we could compare it to a demand curve. But actually, let's not worry about it. It's all come up in one. So let's take a look. I'm going to get the cursor. There we go. So 2 axes, boom and boom, your X and your Y. AD sloping downwards, okay? On the y-axis, we label PL, price level, okay? PL, price level. And on the x-axis, we label RNO, real national output, okay? And there's nothing wrong with you writing RNO. There's nothing wrong with you writing PL, and there's nothing wrong with you writing AD. You don't need to write the full terms all the time. Now, in terms of the annotations, I assume that Tim has gone through annotation with you when we're looking at equilibriums and stuff. But here what you're seeing is that we have P for the price level, and you can put PL for the price level. And then we come down, 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 and we have Y, okay? And people often ask me, why? Why? Well, Y stands for income, all right? We cannot put anything else there. There was a reason, and I've completely forgotten. It was something to do with investment. I'll clarify that for you on Thursday. It's one of those days today. But yeah, we put down Y on real national output. So let's look at the differentials then. If you were drawing a micro diagram for Tim, you would draw the downward slope, you would just write in D. You would draw the y-axis, you would label it as P, and you draw your x-axis and you would label it as Q, okay? All our changes are, we go from P to price level, we swap out Q and we call it real national output. Rather than labeling with Qs, we're labeling with Y. And rather than labeling with P, we're going to label with PL, even though it's not showing on this diagram. Okay, so if we were to do that as a sequence, to draw a diagram, you need an axis, 1, 2. You need an AD curve, 1. Labels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's the sequence that you should be doing it in. And the price level is different to what Tim does on micro. For Tim, price will be of the one commodity, of tea, of whatever. I keep on talking about tea. I don't even drink tea. I might have a coffee in a bit after this as well. But for us, our price level, PL, is the average of all prices for all goods and services within the economy. Okay, so as I said, we're looking at every single thing in the economy. Real national output is the output of the economy, taking into account inflation. Okay, we've done that before. We look at nominal national output at money rate, so it's going to be constantly changing, and we divide it by the average price level. All right, there's your diagram. Let's explore what we can do with it. We can have shifts and we can have movements, just like with micro. Okay, a change in the price level moves us along the AD curve. The AD curve will shift if there's a change in any of the components of AD. So if C was to go down, our AD curve would shift. If investment was to go up, our AD curve would shift, etc., etc. And let's not even get started on external shocks. For example, at the moment, coronavirus is reducing consumption, it's reducing investment, it's actually increasing government spending, and I don't know what it's doing to exports and imports. All right, so here is our curve, a movement along the curve. So, look, that's brilliant. Okay, P1, Y1. So if our normal equilibrium, if the normal price level in the economy is P, now let me get my cursor back, as I'm pointing at the screen for no reason, and the real national output at that point is Y. If we have a rise in the average price level, so if we have serious amounts of inflation, we'll move from P to P1. We call this a contraction in aggregate demand, and as you can see, that moves us from Y to Y1, a shrinkage in real national output. Similarly, if for whatever reason prices within the economy start to come down, we start again at PY, we go down, 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 look at the intersection, we've got PL2 and Y2. So we get decreased prices, and because of that, we get increased real national output. So the law holds when price is high, demand is low, which is Tim's thing. When price level is high, real national output is low. When price level is low, real national output increases and is high. But we can also shift this, okay? Let's have a look. An increase in any of the AD components. So like I just said, if consumption goes up, if investment goes up, if government spending goes up, etc., etc., we push the AD curve out to the right, and the labeling AD to AD1. Now, if you take a look, the price level hasn't changed at all. What we're saying, we've got an initial equilibrium point, or where it hits the AD curve, is your price level 1. And then you've got your real national output 1. Because people in Britain are increasing their consumption, because firms are making investments that are paying off, maybe we've got new technology, the PPF's expanding perhaps, we can push our AD out to AD1. When Britain as society wants to consume more, consumption goes up, we shift AD to AD1, and that will increase real national output. If any part of CIGXM decreases, so imagine we'll stick with the easy one, consumption, if that goes down, well, we're going to have an inward shift from AD to AD2. There you go, look at the cut. So price levels won't change, but because people are consuming less, firms are investing less, we now have less real national output. Okay, so just like you've done with Tim, just like the shifts inwards and outwards, it's the same terminology. The only differentials is that we're using AD, AD1, AD2, and Y1, Y2. Okay. I don't quite know why I put this in. I remember doing this last year, and it's the same diagram again. So simply speaking, AD1 to AD2 is seen to be an outward shift. It's going to raise national output at all price levels. And similarly, an inward shift is AD1 to AD3. So, yeah, sorry about that. But actually, yeah, here you can see a bit of a difference. What they're labeling here is general price level, and they've called this annotation GPL, okay? Usually I just use PL. What they've also put here is they've used real GDP. I just tend to use RNO, real national output. So just don't get confused. What I would suggest is you go with the diagram before this one, but obviously do include PL, okay? All right, now what might cause AD to increase and decrease? Let us take a look. Things that will cause AD to shift inwards from AD1 to AD2 or AD to AD, yeah, AD1 to AD2. And we need to think about the ideas of what pushes money into the economy and what takes money out of the economy. Well, number one, a fall in exports. When we sell goods abroad, obviously money comes into the UK. If we sell less abroad, less money into the UK. So the X part of CIGXM will decrease, AD will shift inwards. A cut in government spending, total opposite at the moment. But if, say, during the recession of 2008, 2009, the government cut spending, we called it austerity, the government were being very austere, then there was less government spending. CIG decreases, AD pushes inwards. Higher interest rates. I had a chat, I think, with a few of you when we did that State of the Nation last week. Interest rates, the cost of borrowing money, so the money that you pay on top of a loan, and the reward for saving money, the money that you get back from a bank for saving your money with them. If the rates of interest come up, people will be more incentivized to save their money, okay? And when we save, we don't spend. When we don't spend, we don't consume. So consumption will drop, and that's AD shifting to the left, inwards, whatever you want to call it. And a decline in household wealth. During the recession, people were losing their jobs. During coronavirus, people are losing their jobs. Maybe they used to have I don't know, loads of savings, for example, and because they lost their job, they're having to spend kind of with their savings. In the short term, that might lift AD, but in the long term, if we've got less money, less wealth to play with, there's going to be less consumption psychologically as well. We're not going to feel very confident to spend. AD is going to be shifting inwards. All right, increase in AD. What's going to increase it? A depreciation of the exchange rate. Okay, I'm going to actually use Word for this. Let me just come out of this and let me go to Word. There are just two things that you need to know. Okay, boom, boom. Okay, so exchange rate. Bear with me. Spiced, whoopidek. Just remember those two terms, and anything to do with exchange rates will become clear. Spiced, strong pound, imports cheaper, exports dearer. More expensive. Okay, whoopidek, weak pound, imports dearer, exports cheaper. And I will keep on talking about this as we go through, okay? But let's have a look at that. Increase in AD, a depreciation of the exchange rate. So at the moment, the pound is relatively strong. £1 will get us something like $1.30. £1 will get us €1.10, for example. So the pound is relatively stronger than those currencies. Depreciation means a drop, means a reduction in the exchange rate. So what you could say is, at the moment, we are spiced. Our pound is strong. That means that because we've got more kind of strength of currency, like on that PPP, production possibility frontiers, purchasing power parity, when we go abroad, we need to spend less pounds to buy foreign products. So our imports are cheaper, so to speak. But because for an American to get £1 to buy a British good, they've got to spend $1.30, tick that through, 130, 260, 390, just to get £3, okay? So that means that the exports are dearer. There will be less money flowing in to the British economy. That depreciation of the exchange rate talks about the situation of whoopidek, a weaker pound, imports become dearer because we've now got to spend more pounds to get the foreign currency to buy the import. So we'll have to look elsewhere. We're going to be in Britain. But exports become cheaper. Americans have to spend less to get the pounds to buy the goods that they want from us. That will mean more exports into out of the United Kingdom to foreign countries. That's more money coming into the British economy. That increases aggregate demand. Boom, there you go. Spiced and whooped it, ladies and gentlemen. I will keep on referring back to that. Let's get back to the PowerPoint. A cut in taxation. Well, if you think about it, I pay VAT whenever I buy something. I pay income tax on the salary that I earn. If they're cut, that means I've got more money to spend. I've got more disposable income. I'm going to consume more. Consumption goes up. Aggregate demand goes to the right. Increase in house prices. Okay, I'm going to write this one down for you as well on our little kind of tracking sheet. I'm going to post this up on Classroom as well. The third thing with an increase in house prices is something called the wealth effect. Okay, something called the wealth effect. What is the wealth effect? Simply speaking, when I get an estate agent around to my house, and I bought my house for, say, £495,000, and the estate agent goes, oh, your house, you've done it up nicely, demand is growing in the area for your kind of house, you can probably sell it for £550,000. My house has gone up by £55,000 in value, okay? Psychologically, I feel wealthier, I feel like I've got more money, so I'm going to consume more and spend more. There's a slight issue with the wealth effect, and we'll discuss this probably on Thursday. I want you to have a little think about this. My house is worth £55,000 more, so I start spending more money. How do I actually get hold of that £55,000? And we'll think about that on Thursday. And the last one, an expansion of supply of credit and lower interest rates. If banks lend more money, if rates of interest come down, loans are cheaper to pay back, we're going to be more incentivized to take these. We're going to spend, consume, AD, right. There you go, people. Let's move on. So, I'm not going to go through this in too much detail. Basically speaking, if ever you hear me discuss something called monetary policy, that first one, and we're going to do this after Christmas, that's when I'm talking about interest rates, okay? So if we're saying that there's an expansion of supply of credit, so there's more loans from banks, and there's lower rates of interest and higher interest rates, that's monetary policy. Fiscal policy is when the government play about with tax. This could be direct or indirect. You'll do that with Tim. Changes in government spending and government borrowing as well. We'll talk about it after Christmas. But the point to note there when we're talking about tax, so for example, a cut in government spending, a cut in direct and indirect taxes, those are both fiscal policies, and they will either kind of shrink AD or increase AD. It's getting a bit dark. And business and consumer confidence, yeah, basically speaking, we'll look at that next week. But when we talk about confidence, quite often we're talking about consumers and firms investing, okay? There we go. The key thing to recognise is that Britain struggles in one thing, and that is exportation, the X element of aggregate demand. Exports are goods and services sold to other countries. Exports are an injection into a nation's circular flow of income. Don't even worry about the circular flow of income. We're going to do that later on. All you need to recognise is that the minute we export something, those pounds are injected into our economy. And there are many things that can affect the level of demand for what we export. Let's have a look at 4 factors. Number 1, the relative prices of exports in world markets. Now, Britain doesn't export much. We export very expensive things, okay? We export really kind of sophisticated financial services, loan products, mortgage products, hedge funds, that kind of stuff. We export pharmaceuticals, medicines. We actually export a lot of weaponry, like Rolls-Royce and Boeing make missiles, make tanks, make planes that we use in war, or we don't use in war, other countries use in war. So let's imagine then we've made a mad new missile in Britain, okay, and it's this fantastic missile that will blow up whatever you want, okay. If, for example, France have made a missile that's actually better and is cheaper in euros, then foreign countries are going to say, well, we know that the British missile is good, but we don't want that. It's cheaper in France. Let's go and get it there. Okay. And Britain has that problem. Things that we export are highly expensive. There's less injections coming into our economy because we're exporting less because we're expensive. Okay. The exchange rate, well, as we've already said, we are in a position of spiced, ladies and gentlemen. We do have a strong currency relative to the dollar, relative to the euro. So exports become more expensive, imports cheaper, exports dearer. Exports becoming dearer, there's less money coming into the economy. But because imports are cheaper, because of our stronger pound, we're spending more abroad. There's more money leaving the economy. Non-price demand factors, i.e. design and branding. Well, you can't brand hedge fund investment. You can't brand a mortgage particularly. You can't really brand a tank or a missile. What am I trying to say, really? Think about, I don't know, clothing. If you think about the most fashionable clothes, I mean, to me, what am I wearing? I'm wearing North Face today, okay? North Face, an American brand. So really, all that money is going to be being pushed towards the American market when we want to buy North Face from scratch, okay? In terms of design, Britain is very good at making quite innovative technologies, financial technologies, we call it fintech. That's going to be down to design, so we'll be exporting a lot of that. And the last one, the strength of AD in our key export markets. There's often a saying that when America sneezes, Britain catches a cold. When America is struggling, we will struggle. So you think, if one of our key export markets is America and they like buying our fashion, our music, our whatever, and it is as simple as that, it could be fashion and music. If the American economy starts struggling, there's going to be less aggregate demand across the whole economy, but less demand in particular for British exports. That's going to be less injections into our economy, less money coming in, and that's going to cause us trouble. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We made it. Okay, first sheet that I want you to do by 4:30 today. This one, activity worksheet. Define the term AD, you can do that. Write down the parts of AD, you can do that. Outline 3 factors that might determine the level of savings in an economy. You need to think about that because we're going to do that next time we meet. But this table is the important bit, okay? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. All I want you to do is to write down which part of AD, C, I, G, X, or M is going to be affected. There's usually only going to be one. Will that cause AD to increase or decrease? And then tell me why. In terms of the key terms, a rise in interest rates, I don't need to explain. An increase in employment, I don't need to explain. A fall in welfare spending, what we mean by that is benefits, okay? So job seekers allowance, universal credit, etc. A rise in the exchange rate, spiced or whoopee deck, you think. A falling GDP in the EU, Britain trades with the EU, think about that. And a rise in consumer confidence, I don't really think I need to explain, okay? It's consumer confidence, we're happy to spend. Now for homework, here's what I want you to do for Thursday. I've given you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 situations. I want you to draw me diagrams, okay, to show what these 6 things would do to the aggregate demand curve. And let me just look through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of these diagrams are going to be shifts, okay? You're going to shift AD either inwards or outwards. Simply draw the annotation, just like on the PowerPoint, the static price level, and then you're going to label Y1 and Y2 on the x-axis. Okay, so you've got an increase in investment expenditure. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Question F definitely is about obviously spiced and whoopie deck. Think about that. And for question D, a 50% fall in share prices, that to me is kind of a confidence thing. So it's going to be affecting consumption and investment. But I'll let you play with this. 6 separate diagrams, shifting AD either left or right. And at the start of the lesson, 3 o'clock or 3:05 after you have your break, obviously on Thursday, we're going to start the lesson with this. Well, I hope today's been not too painful, a little bit long. There was no Zoom, however, whatever. Next Monday, we're going to be zooming it right up, okay? I'm not even going to tell you on Thursday to hear you complain. Hope today's been useful. I am about on Classroom and email all afternoon. If you need me for anything, just send me a message. Otherwise, it's the usual. Watch the video, do the 2 sheets, and we are job done. Have a lovely afternoon, people. Goodbye.